This farm's Tent Rock. We're situated about 100 kilometres south of Adelaide on the Fleurieu Peninsula. In the early 90s, I got really disillusioned with current agriculture. I think we were using a lot of chemicals to control particularly things like thistles and red-legged earth mite, lucerne flea, cockchafers. Just every year we seem to have to try and control these things. And it's not a very good reason for change, I suppose, but I was scared. I really got frightened that we were having to just kill things all the time. Now, I didn't know what we were going to do about it, but I made a conscious decision at that time that we were going to make some change. So every job that we did from then on, where we had to use an imported energy source, whether it was a animal treatment or a fertiliser, anything that had to be imported into the farm, we were trying to work out a way to do the job, or not have to do that job. So if we were drenching sheep, we'd be busting ourselves to work out how we didn't have to drench sheep. If we were spreading fertiliser, it was the same thing. How do we do this without having to do that job? So we're offering minerals to the cattle and the sheep, and this is the best way we've found so far to do it. So these bit of conveyor belting just protects the elements that we put in the containers here from the rain, and the cows, hopefully on cue, come and stick their nose up underneath and get what they want. So it's really interesting, different times of the year and different types of feed that's on offer, eating different minerals. The other thing that was really important to us was to be able to shift this really easily. We do all our work on a motorbike, and so we had to design something that we could shift with the motorbike, but also be robust enough that the cattle didn't wreck it. We're not spreading much in the way of fertilisers, and what we do spread is compost, so it's not really about spreading any particular elements or minerals. So anything that the cattle really need, as far as phosphorus goes, or copper, magnesium, they're able to access in a feeder like this. One of our goals is that if you have an aerial view of the farm, every paddock will look a bit different. There'll be a different colour of the paddocks. There'll be a different stage of growth. There might be flowers have been able to come up in a paddock where the grazing's been a little bit different. So our country really has a lack of flowers for most of the year. I think capeweed's probably the first major flower we get coming out of the winter time. And insects are really important for what we do, so we've got to provide flowers for them. And the Grazing Naturally system offers that opportunity for plants to flower out of what we would normally describe as their optimum time. What we'd really like to see across the landscape is a huge diversity of plants. And some of those hopefully will come just with our grazing management. We'll allow the opportunity for the plants that haven't been able to germinate or get established over the years to come back. But sometimes we get really aggressive about it, and we'll spray out an area and plant to a new lot of species. So in a paddock like this one, where we're planting herbs and grasses and legumes, forbs, we're trying to speed up that change in the environment. So we'll pick paddocks that have not responded very, very well to our grazing regime. We don't do it for very much land because it's obviously very costly, but it is an opportunity to make change quickly. Now, what we're finding, we're sowing the 6 or so different perennial plants with about a dozen annuals, and those annuals do seem to prepare the ground or inoculate it, I'm not sure what the term is, to make the perennial plants established. The other thing about planting such a diversity of species in a paddock like we have here, we really get no insect issues. So when we were planting our ryegrass and clovers, which is what we did for a lot of years, and thought we were planting diversity because we planted 3 different types of subclover and 2 different ryegrasses, they were hammered by the insects and the grubs, and some of that was the lack of diversity, some of that was our grazing management. We talk about diversity a lot, and with diversity in plants. I think it's really important that we have diversity of species within our system. We run both sheep and cattle in our system, so that they're going to provide a different type of bacteria and fungi in the soil. So by using both sheep and cattle, we're able to manage issues like worms. So internal parasitic worms are really important for the health of the animals. We don't want to get rid of them totally, we just want to manage them so that they're part of our system, not something that we've got to deal with. So we manage our pastures with the different grazing, so we graze with the cattle at sometimes and with sheep at sometimes, and some of that is about controlling the parasite burdens within the animals, as well as creating the diversity in the soil and the plants. The benefits of this type of agriculture, look, there are lots of them. I don't stress now about running out of feed. Hopefully most of the time I don't get to the situation where we are stressed for having to bust ourselves to get up every day and feed animals. We've created an opportunity to either sell stock before we run out of feed and get more stock when we've got too much feed, or we've got tools that we can use rather than just going and buying hay or buying grain. So that sort of stress used to keep me awake at night, and you know that you're wrecking the landscape when you're feeding the animals for months at a time. It's really nice not to care about whether the price of diesel goes up or the price of fertilisers go up or the cost of chemicals for your drenching. I don't care about resistance with sheep drenches, because we just don't drench anymore. We haven't had to do that for 10 or 15 years. So those stresses that we create in modern agriculture, we can get rid of them. And often because we're taking responsibility for what we're doing, rather than being told that we have to go and run more stock or put more fertiliser on or drench the sheep at a particular worm count. So it's a much softer way of managing the landscape and managing ourselves. Now, my family will tell me that I'm really ordinary at regenerating myself, but that's something we're working on.